You're wondering, what does this have to do with anything? Well, what I said earlier was trigonometry was the study of things with three angles. There's actually a relationship that happens for all triangles of a given angle with these sides. We call them trigonometric ratios. And there's three of them that I'm going to introduce to you here. The first, and here they are over here. Now, there's buttons on your calculator that deal with this, and I'm going to show you this in the next lesson. But here are the three trig ratios. The first one over here is on your calculator. It's called, you might say sin, but this is actually called sine. Sin is just shorthand for sine. So if we talk about sine, that's its first trigonometric ratio. We've got the second one here called cos. You might call it cos, but it's actually short for cosine. And then we've got the last one at the bottom, which is tan, which is short for tangent. Now these are all based on the angle theta. So I'm going to draw my triangle again up the top here. So if you have a look, I've got my triangle. I've got theta over here, and let's just figure out what the three sides are. I've got over here, I've got my hypotenuse opposite my right angle. I've got over on this side, my opposite side opposite my theta. And I've also got on this side, my adjacent, which is right next to my theta, or the one that's left. Now what trigonometric ratios are is basically for all triangles of a given angle theta. So we might not know what theta is, but if you can have different triangles with the exact same angle. So for example, let me try this. I can take this triangle and put it right here. And I can make it bigger. Now, that angle, theta, has actually stayed the same size. It's exactly the same, and you can get your protractor out and measure it, and it will give you the exact same size. But what you'll notice is that the ratio between the sides, they don't change. The ratio is just when you kind of compare the side lengths, they're going to be in the same ratio. They're going to be, when we write them as fractions, they're going to be exactly the same. And that's what these trig ratios are. Now what they tell me, how I write them is I usually write them as a fraction. I usually write these trig ratios as a fraction. So let's have a look here. Sine is my first trig ratio. And what sine is basically, if I divide my opposite side, so opposite side, and I divide it by the hypotenuse, that's what sine is. So here, if I take my opposite side of my right angle triangle over here, and I divide it by the hypotenuse, the blue side, that will give me sine. And so we shorthand it to just O over H. Okay, so that's what sine theta is. Cos theta is if I take my adjacent side and divide that by the hypotenuse. And so we shorthand this to A over H. Okay, and the final trigonometric ratio or trig ratio is tan, which is just the opposite side divided by the adjacent side. So here we shorthand this to, I've got A, O over A. Okay, so what these trig ratios tell me is that if I have my three sides of my right angle triangle, I'm going to just erase this now. If for given angle theta, these trig ratios are going to be the same, regardless of how big your triangle is. Your triangle could be this small, it could be massive, but these three trig ratios are the same for the same given angle theta.